everyone, my name is Miss Sarah. I'm from the Lucy Robbins Library, and I'm here today to do a fun Babies Love Art program with you. So this program isn't so much for your kids to sit down and watch, but for you, the grown-ups, to learn some fun art activities you can do with your babies at home. So normally we have this program at the library for kids that are ages 6 to 24 months, and we'll fill this room with art projects and sensory activities for them to explore. But since we can't have that in the library this year, I figured I'll show you guys how to make some of these fun projects to do at home with your little ones. The first project I want to show you guys is called Paint in a Bag. So this is a fun, mess-free way of babies exploring paint and that feeling of squishing it around, but without getting it all over their hands. So what you're going to need to do this project is you're going to need a Ziploc bag. I recommend getting one of the more heavy-duty kinds of bags just because if they're scratching at it a lot, they can tend to rip it in my experience. So having a heavy-duty Ziploc is a good idea for this project. You will also want some duct tape. I didn't have any duct tape on me, but since I'm not having a little child use this today, I figured just some normal painter's tape is fine, but if you're having your child play with this, I definitely recommend getting some duct tape. You will also need some paint. So just in case of any spills and leaks or in case any holes appear, I always recommend using washable paint. Whenever I do this program, I always use washable paints just for that reason. And just for some fun color experiments, we're going to use the primary colors too, so that they can see how colors might mix together. A younger baby won't quite understand why the colors are mixing together, but this is a great introduction to color theory. So even though the little one might not get it, you can start introducing to them how, hey, blue and red will make purple. And when we mix our reds and our yellows, we're gonna get orange, which is really cool. So definitely get some washables in the primary colors. And lastly, you might want some paper towels, like I said, just in case things get messy, and sometimes you'll get a little messy too when you're squirting the paint in the bag for them. And finally, another option is you could have some cardstock to put inside your bag. So you can fit a piece of paper inside the bag so you can save the artwork that they made from squishing the paint around. Or if you just want it to be a sensory experience, then you can just use the empty Ziploc bag. And if you want to combine this with a book to help them understand how the colors are changing, one of the books I always use with this activity is called Mouse Paint. As the mouse are trying to hide from the cat, they dump themselves into different colors of paint using the primary colors, and they find that mixing all these colors makes such cool, fun new ones. So this is a great book to go along with the activity if you want to try reading while they're playing with this. So let's get started and I'll show you how to make this. So I'm going to start off showing you up close like this, and then I'll zoom in, I'll do it one more time so you can get a really close look at how this all works. It's pretty simple, this is one of our easiest activities we do, but just in case I want to make sure you have a good understanding. So you're going to start off, you're going to open up your bag, I'm going to roll up my sleeves so I don't get too dirty, and you're going to take your paint and try to get as deep inside the bag as you can and pour the blue in one corner, just a little bit, you don't actually need that much. Just a squirt about that big, like I said, I'll show you a little closer afterwards, is all you really need. You don't want to overflow the bag, otherwise it might pop and it's more likely to leak. And then you can put red in another corner. Okay, so squeeze your red into the next corner. And then finally, somewhere like right around the middle, you're gonna put yellow. Just a dot. Like I said, you don't need much of all the colors. Just a little squirt of each color. And once you have all 3 squirts of the color, you're gonna seal up your bag as best as you can, and you're gonna take your tape. So with duct tape, this can be a little tricky because duct tape is extra sticky, but that's why I recommend it, just because you really don't want the kiddos opening up the bag after you filled it with paint, because that would take away the mess-free part of this project. You're gonna roll it over and seal up both sides so that nothing is going to get out of your bag. And then at this point, you can either tape the bag to a high chair, you can tape it to a window so they can see the colors through the light, or you can just tape it down to a table. You don't even need to tape it if you're okay, but usually I tape it down just in case it does leak. You don't want them wandering around your house with this just because they could get paint everywhere. But in my experience, taping it down seems to work the best. They can color and squish all the paint around and not make a big mess. So let me show you one more time up close. And there we have it, a super fun and super easy art project for your baby that introduces some color theory, as well as a really cool sensory experience for them, squishing all that paint around inside that bag. You can add a little bit more paint too if you feel like there wasn't enough. You can always add more. You can try different color combinations. In the past I've drawn trees on the bags and done fall colors for a fall scene. You can even do winter colors if you want a more of a snowy scene. You can do shaving cream instead of paint, which is a very fun experience too. But with shaving cream, it does add a lot of air to the bag, so make sure you get a lot of that extra air out, otherwise your bag is a little bit more likely to pop if you do use shaving cream. And if you decide to add a paper inside of your bag, you end up with a really awesome, unique art project that was made by your little one. Though parents, when you do remove the paper from the bag, it is definitely not a mess-free process, so make sure you're prepared to wash your hands and have some paper towels nearby to lay your art piece down on. So I hope you try out this one fun project, but don't worry because we have even more fun things that you can do with your baby. So the next fun thing we're going to look at is making some sensory bins, which is another great way for the baby to play and explore. Let's look at another few options of what you can do at home with your little one. This next activity is super easy to recreate. It only takes a couple of items that you probably already have lying around the house, since it can be made of anything. So this is going to be a sensory bin. Sensory bins are super duper fun and they're really easy to recreate. So I always make mine around a theme, so depending on the season, I run my Babies Love Art program. So this one I'm going to show you today is from my spring Babies Love Art, and it's a garden theme. But you can do anything really. So if you want to go outside and gather some leaves, you can fill a bin with leaves, and you can make a fall scene. So really what you're trying to do here is engage baby with different senses, different things that engage their senses, like touch, their sights, their smell, and depending on what you put in the sensory bin, maybe even their taste. So, for example, I've done a Jell-O sensory bin, which definitely engages their sense of touch, even the sense of cold. A little bit of taste if they put the Jell-O in their mouth, but when I do a program, I don't really encourage the babies to put anything in their mouth, but if they do, I always make sure it's taste safe, as well as making sure that any items that go in the bin are safe and not a choking hazard. So that's another thing you want to definitely consider. But for you at home, a Jell-O bin might be really fun. Maybe do some, I usually used unflavored Jell-O, so it doesn't taste too great, but it's definitely fun to squish around. You can also use ground up cereal to make a sand texture. And if you're feeling ambitious and ready to break out the dye, you can even do rainbow spaghetti, which I've done in the past. It can be very messy, but it's really fun to explain all the colors to baby, teach them different words for colors, show them different pictures that match up with the color of their spaghetti, and then see what happens when all of your rainbow colors mix together in the end. Sensory bins are a really great and fun way to explore these senses in a controlled environment. So I'm going to show you guys how to make this garden sensory bin with things that I have here at the library, but you might have different items at home, so get creative and see what you can create. I'm going to show you guys an example of how I put together one of my sensory bins. So as I said before, this is a sensory bin I would often use if I did this program during the springtime. So what I filled the sensory bin with is some paper crinkle. So this is stuff that you can usually find around Easter. You can even use the Easter grass that's more colorful. I went with a brown paper crinkle though, because I want it to kind of look like dirt without actually being dirt. And then I have my baggie that's filled with spring goodies. So I have some flowers. So what I do usually is I start off just making a nice scene, and it does not stay this way very long. So I would fill it up with flowers, I'd hide them all around. It doesn't have to be perfect, you can just scatter some things and make it kind of look like a garden. And then as you're building your scene, you want to leave some surprises too. So maybe I'd hide a vegetable, and I try to bury it, see if they can discover it. Some onions. And as they're playing, they're going to mix up this garden anyway, so they're going to find more and more things because they're going to make a big mess, most likely. So I want to bring in a bunch of different things, different colors, different senses, different textures, different things that are going to engage their senses. So for this particular one, I'm not really engaging their sense of smell, but more their imagination and their sense of touch. So I have things that are smooth, things that are hard. Maybe bring in some fake animals, so like a fake butterfly. So I can start teaching them the different words like flower, butterfly, pepper. And then even continuing on that. Now I don't exactly have fake gardening tools, but I do have play food tools, so I give them maybe a spoon to help them dig around in their garden. This is definitely not for gardening, but they don't know the difference. So fun things that engage their imagination, different spoons, maybe a knife. Maybe they can try to see if they can dig through with a knife. And this is great for their hand-eye coordination. And I'll just keep putting things together. And it always starts off really nice. Maybe a whisk. We'll see what they can do with a whisk. Maybe a masher. And after a bit, when I'm satisfied, I feel like I've put together a fun adventure for them, I'll let them come play. And now I can show them the different words and see, okay, can we find any vegetables using this tool? And engage their senses and try to get them to think. Depending on their age, they may process things a little bit differently. But this is a great way to engage them in some play that's completely safe, indoors, and fun activities that even remind them of warmer times when we're getting into these colder months too. So have fun, build a sensory bin, and see what you can create. The last project I'm going to teach you guys how to make is a super easy homemade Play-Doh. It's completely taste safe and it smells amazing. So if your little one's the type that likes to put things in their mouth, this is completely safe for them. So I'll show you guys the steps and walk you through how I make it, and then I encourage you to try to make it yourselves. So let's get started. To make some homemade Play-Doh, it's very easy. You only need a couple of ingredients. So for this example, I'm going to just half the recipe just because I don't need a full batch of Play-Doh. But if you want to do this at home, I'll include in the description both the half recipe and the full recipe. So to start off, you will need some water. So for a half recipe, you need 1/4 cup of water. So I went ahead and measured that out. And it does need to be hot water, so be very careful. I went ahead and I just nuked it for about 2 minutes in the microwave, and now it's plenty hot. You don't really need to boil it. Microwaving does just enough. You will also need sugar. So for the half recipe, you're going to need 1/4 cup of sugar. You will need some flour. So again, for half, you do 3/4 cup. And then for flavor, if they decide to put it in their mouth, as well as for color and scent, you can use some tropical punch Kool-Aid. So everything in this Play-Doh recipe is edible, just in case the baby does put it in their mouth. And lastly, you will need some vegetable oil. And for the vegetable oil, you're going to need, in a half recipe, 1½ teaspoons. So it's very simple to make. You're just going to basically take all your ingredients and pour them into your bowl. So this is completely edible and taste safe. If you use it with sugar, it'll taste pretty good. You can do the same recipe using salt instead of sugar, in which case if baby puts it in their mouth, it's going to quickly deter them and make them realize, oh, this is actually really disgusting. So it's up to you. If you're more comfortable with them putting it in their mouth, I would do sugar. If you would like them not to put it in their mouth, I recommend the salt because it quickly lets them know that this is pretty gross. It also depends on what you have. And it doesn't have to be exact. I'm doing this in front of my camera, so it's a little hard to see, but there you go. All right, so once you have mixed up all your ingredients into the bowl, it's just a matter of stirring. So I got this fork. So to begin with, you're going to want to stir it with just a utensil because it's going to be very liquidy at first. But as you start stirring, it'll start to solidify and become a little bit more solid. And at that point, you can go in with your hands. And as you're stirring, you might want to add a little bit more flour, just because if you notice it's still a little too sticky. So the exact amount of flour, there really is no exact amount, to be quite honest. Just keep adding flour until you feel like you've got the right consistency. So whatever you start with is a good base to get the right amount. And then after that, just keep adding flour until you get a nice putty shape. So just add about a spoon of flour at a time. You don't want it to get too thick, especially as the water starts to cool down as you're mixing it. You'll notice the consistency starts to get a little bit thicker. You can optionally also do this in a pot over the stove, so it keeps it hot, but if you do it over the stove, I do tend to find that it does start to burn a little bit. So I tend to just do it in a bowl, add the hot water, and then just keep adding an additional cup until you get the right consistency. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to mix mine up until I get it ready to use my hands. So after about 10 minutes of adding extra flour and kneading my dough, you now have a perfectly homemade Play-Doh, which is completely taste safe if your baby decides to put it in their mouth. And it smells amazing. So what I ended up using was an off-brand Kool-Aid that I found at the dollar store, which was Tropical Crunch. So if after all the extra flour, it turned into this bubblegum pink color, and it smells really, really good too. So this is a super easy project, and it, like I said, it takes you about 10 minutes, and this is about what a half a recipe will get you for Play-Doh. So it's quite a substantial amount of Play-Doh, and it will last a very long time. You can keep this in your refrigerator, just keep it in a plastic baggie, and it keeps very well. If you do refrigerate it and use it another time, you may find that it got a little sticky again, so just add a little bit of flour before you start playing, and you're good to go. And lastly, you may be wondering why you don't add all the extra flour right at the beginning, and that's because if you add all the extra flour at the start, the Play-Doh will get very lumpy and chunky, so adding the flour gradually as you're working is the best method for this project. So I hope you guys try this at home, as well as some of our other fun projects for your little ones, and that you share with us something that you might have made. So if you do try any of these projects, feel free to share your results with us at #LRWLKids on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Happy crafting!